Imagine a zero waste store. This kind of baffled me because I had to figure out what this actually meant. And so when I was doing research and prep for this interview, it was really interesting because what they're talking about is about the grocery stores and all that plastic that they put around the cucumbers, the green peppers, all the salads, all the things. They package it. And why do they do that? And what do we do with that packaging? Like, I was really surprised that there are so many zero waste stores around the world, but not in Ontario. In fact, it kind of threw me for such a loop because apparently there's a couple of stores that are in the British Columbia and in Quebec, and so they've been doing it for a little while, but not yet in Ontario. I was really baffled. Like, I really am baffled by it. So I get to chat with Michelle Genttner today, who's one of the co-founders of the Unboxed Market here in Toronto. And she seriously totally surprises me of how much waste is actually happening. That, for example, only 10% of recycled materials are actually recycled. What? Here I thought I was a massive tree hugger, and it turns out that my neighbor may have contaminated the entire lot because they didn't rinse out the stuff. So there's a lot of improvements that we need to make, but more surprisingly is about the adoption of her Unboxed Market. And we talk about that, about what that looked like in the neighborhood, you know, and about the elderly, how receptive they were, and so on. And it's amazing. So I really hope you enjoy this episode because I was actually very surprised, and honestly, it kind of has challenged me to think in a different way, and I might start being a bit of a pain in the grocery stores to see if I can get away with not taking some of their packaging. Anyways, hope you enjoy this episode. Cheers. Welcome to the Can Innovate podcast, the first ever podcast designed to showcase Canadian thought leadership. These innovators share industry insights, entrepreneurial best practices, lessons learned, and other tips that we can incorporate right into our lives, our careers, and our businesses. So let's get inspired. So Michelle, welcome to the Can Innovate podcast. I have been dying to talk to you about this whole Unboxed zero waste store that you have. It is amazing to me.
Thank you so much. It's exciting for us.
So, Michelle, tell us, I mean, for our listeners out there, could you tell us a little bit what this Unboxed Market is and how does a zero waste store even exist?
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely far from the first zero waste store in the world. There are a lot, Europe, Australia, the United States, and there's a few in Canada and more are coming. We opened ours we're actually 2 months this week. So, depending on when this airs, add a couple of weeks. It's baby new. And we're just, trying to allow consumers the opportunity to shop more conscientiously and to be incredibly aware of what you're bringing into your home that you don't need to, and then therefore putting out into the world that you also don't need to. So, for example, the common item that we're talking about a lot lately that everybody seems to see in every grocery store is the English cucumber, which is wrapped in plastic, which a few of our customers call the condom of the cucumber. And it's entirely unnecessary. It is something that cucumber was never wrapped before, and suddenly somebody said, we're going to wrap all the cucumbers. And now we can't sell cucumbers in our store because we are deliberately trying to remove single-use packaging, particularly plastics, from our environment. So you won't find them in our store unless we can get them without plastic.
Is it hard to get things without plastics?
It is. Yeah. We're constantly searching. We're constantly researching, reaching out to producers. My partner, Louise, who is the amazing human who maintains the produce and the butcher counter, is a brilliant person in talking to people and explaining why we don't want this product in our store. So he goes out and sources all the fruits and vegetables. And there are many times he'll go multiple times a week to buy, and there are many times when he'll go and, something that he really wanted came this week in plastic, and so we just won't buy it, and it won't be on the shelf that week. So our produce selection changes a little bit all the time, because if you can't get something in the way that you're expecting it to, it's different than when you just go and every pepper is wrapped in plastic and every potato is wrapped in plastic, and you can bring in truckloads of them, right? So as a small store without that purchasing power, it gets a little bit tricky.
So how did you guys come up with this amazing concept or idea of doing it here?
So to open the store in Toronto kind of just flowed with where we were in our world at the time. We come from a hospitality background, and we sold our last business just over a year ago, and took some time, and we're talking about what our next move was. And Louise had always been interested in markets and stores and that kind of other side of hospitality, where it's not serving people just for a dinner and then maybe you see them again, maybe you don't, but having that interaction on a daily or weekly or whatever basis is, where people are coming in and actually experiencing your environment repeatedly. And so when we were talking about it, said, if we're going to open a grocery store, then we need to open something that is true to our background and our beliefs. And since we were both raised in agricultural communities, we're very connected to our food. And so it was something that you really look at and say, okay, well, our farmers aren't packaging, it doesn't grow like this. There's no reason for it to be like this, right? The farmers are responding to larger chain grocery stores and changing their packaging. And so we said, why won't we do it the way that we always did? And so removing the packaging, having that really lovely, fresh, beautiful product right at your hand. You can touch it, you can smell it, you can see how pretty it is, and it's not inside of a crinkly cellophane or plastic wrap.
I love it. And by the way, I think it's just a genius idea. So, I'm guessing you have no plastic bags at all, so everyone has to bring their own bags and as well.
Yeah, and that was the one little caveat to our store is we took over a grocery store that had been here for 50 years already, and it was a very traditional community grocery store. So we took over a few months ago while we were waiting for some of our inventory and some of our equipment and things to arrive, at least in the province, because we wanted to be able to close and renovate and rebrand in as little time as possible, because it is a neighborhood store and people need their groceries. And so while we were here for the first few months, we slowly phased out the plastic bags at the cash register, and people were asking where are the plastic bags, what's going on, and trying to talk through about this is a better thing. And they go, but isn't it more expensive to you? As our customers are asking us, doesn't it cost you more to have a paper bag instead of a plastic bag? And we said, absolutely. Actually, it costs, 5, 6, 7 times more depending on what your volumes are. But at the end of the day, this little piece of plastic is going to be around for centuries, and who knows what's going to happen to our world because of it. So we're just not going to provide it. And then it was, reducing you'd see people start to get potatoes and not grab that little produce bag off of the rack and just bring the potatoes to the counter. So they were kind of transitioning on their own because we weren't making it as accessible. And then when we phased it out entirely, obviously, with this store, we did allow still paper products to be in store for, sometimes it's an emergency. You didn't even realize you were stopping for groceries and you don't have your bags or you don't have your jars or the things that you usually take with you. So we have those on hand. Paper bags are available for anyone to use. And then we have glass jars and cloth and cotton, cotton, hemp, different kinds of bags that you can also purchase. And the jars we actually run on a deposit system. So if you get one of our glass jars, because you have your containers at home and you just really needed it for the moment, if you wash it and bring it back clean, we'll return the deposit to that.
That's amazing. I think this is really cool because not only did you're kind of challenging the status quo, you're also kind of educating the neighborhood.
Yeah, and I mean, the neighborhood that we're in, I'm not sure for audiences who don't know, where College and Dovercourt is downtown Toronto, and it is very much a traditional Portuguese neighborhood. That neighborhood has changed. I mean, I live in the neighborhood with Luis, and we've been in the neighborhood for over 15 years now. And we've seen the neighborhood change and seen, the population age as people move their parents into their homes or move them into different areas. They go to suburbia. And new people move to the neighborhood. So while we still very much have that very Portuguese neighborhood, we also have this new community that's moved in as well, and all of the awesomeness that they bring with them. So we've tried to meet that by saying, okay, we're going to keep some of the very traditional items. Like we still do the chorizo in-house. We do it multiple times a week. It's fresh. It's the same recipe. It's the same people making that. The people stayed with us from the previous store, and they're following those recipes that we always had. We kept the hot table. We've changed some of the items that were on the original hot table to, again, try and recognize the change in the neighborhood. But we've kept some of the traditional items as well, because we do have the original clientele who are still coming back and still shopping, and they're also adjusting. You know, we'll have, and a lot of them are seniors, which is something that people were really worried about, that, you know, the seniors aren't going to get it, or an older population isn't excited to do these things. And it's been actually the opposite, where everybody in their I'll say their prime, because, you know, I know 90-year-olds who are younger than some 20-year-olds. So they come in and they're like, oh my God, I remember when I was a kid and we used to shop like this, and we would go to the local market and we would get our apples and we would get our potatoes and we get our fish wrapped in paper. And they're super excited about it because it's a memory for them, and it's something that they think some of them don't know why it ever shifted off, right? And so now they're kind of reconnecting with that, which is really awesome. And I think that's the more important part in this entire zero waste conversation is, this is not a new idea. This is how we all used to do things. When I was a little girl, I grew up in rural southern Ontario. I remember when you would go to the grocery stores and they would ask you if you wanted paper or plastic. I'm not that old. Like, this is not, people say, oh, it was 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It wasn't. It was, 15, 20 years ago in some regions of the country where things roll out a little bit slower. So that was a really awesome conversation that I've been able to have with customers, because they remember it, but also I remember it, right? And so people my age also remember it, and they're now being able to teach that to their kids and their nieces and nephews and the younger ones who are coming up into this world.
No, it's brilliant. I think it's really interesting. And I was going to ask you, because I was really curious to hear about, the adoption of, what you're doing. Has it been a really positive reception? Because, you always kind of wonder, that's kind of really out of the norm for most people. But it sounds like everyone's really kind of accepted it and they're really excited about it.
For the most part. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who's not happy, and there is no way. I mean, the many, many years that we both have in hospitality, we have learned often the hard way, repeatedly, that you cannot please everybody all the time. And our objective is not to try and please everybody. It's to try and create a space where if people want to have a way to contribute to less garbage in the world, or I guess to not contribute to garbage in the world, then we've created that kind of little nook. And ideally, other stores will take this on, and other stores will open. Realistically, what we need are the big guys to open, and that will help in broad strokes be able to change the mentality and the habits of the everyday consumer.
No, it's amazing. And the other thing is, I was really fascinated to find out that there are other provinces inside of Canada that have actually already done something very similar, but Ontario was a little bit behind. Why do you think that is?
I feel like Ontario always just needs to dip their toe in the water before they jump in, which is crazy, because we're, so multicultural and so populous, and we have all of these awesome, innovative things happening around us all the time. But for something that's an actual leap, it's like we don't have the faith in ourselves somehow. So, British Columbia has these eco-conscious or zero-waste stores. Quebec has so many in the city of Quebec, in the city of Montreal, in small towns. They also have manufacturers who are working to bring products to the market that are more eco-conscious all over the country. We receive emails and phone calls from small little stores in Alberta or individuals in Manitoba. It's amazing, because they'll hear about us somewhere, Facebook, through the articles that have been out, wherever it is, and they'll actually pick up the phone and call us and want to talk to us about what's going on here and how they can possibly transplant this to their area. And like I said, we're far from the first. So if we're getting those calls, the other stores are also getting all of those calls and hearing that rallying cry from people who are just as excited to have it in their area, right? So when you look at that and then you say, okay, but Ontario is also incredibly populated, that means that we also are producing a ridiculous amount of waste. That means that, you know, if you look at some of the statistics and they say 10% of plastic actually gets recycled, especially now that we don't have access to the Asian recycling units, that plastic all goes to landfill. So people who sort don't even necessarily realize that what they have put into their blue bin is actually going to just go straight into garbage. And it might be, for all intents and purposes, because their neighbor next door didn't sort properly or didn't rinse their containers, and now that truckload is contaminated and it's no good to be recycled anyways. And then when you don't have the facilities to recycle, that just compounds the problem.
That's insane, right? Like, you think about that and you're like, because I don't understand how the recycling actually happens. I always think I'm a great citizen because I recycle everything and compost everything. But you're right, things can get tainted and that's the end of it. And it's kind of crazy. And the other thing was, I was reading your website and I was really surprised to hear that the province of Ontario says that Ontarians created enough food waste to fill the Rogers Centre 5 times every year. That's massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's just food waste. So that's literally something in produce or fish or cheese or, you know, actual food. That's not counting packaging that we just put in the garbage. And the crazy part about that is a lot of it is from grocery stores. So if you look at a grocery store, if you walk through the aisles, everything is always perfect. It's rare that you'll find a bruised apple. It's rare that you'll find wilted lettuce. It's where did all of those things go? Well, they have staff walking up and down the aisles all day long, pulling anything that doesn't look perfect, and it gets pitched. And so here, this is an intrinsic part of our store that we're so excited that we got this location because we have an industrial kitchen downstairs. And so we cook the food that goes on our hot table and goes in our grab-and-go cafe. We make stocks, we make soups, we make all sorts of stuff. So if, you know, an apple falls before it gets bruised and before it looks like someone's not going to buy it because they're buying it because of how it looks and not because of how it tastes, we'll cook it into something because a bruise on the edge of the apple is not the end of the world. If it was your apple at home and it got bruised because you dropped it on the floor, you would cut that little bruise off and eat the rest of the apple, right? So in the stores, they don't do that. So it's kilos and kilos and kilos of waste daily just from grocery stores. And so we're even here trying to make sure we eliminate that as much as possible, right down to, you know, the peelings from a carrot can go into a soup stock, right? Like there's no waste wherever we can help it.
Oh, this is amazing. I'm guessing you've had some lessons learned from this whole venture.
Yes, still learning every day. every time we think that we've got a rhythm figured out or we've got an order system figured out, something changes. You know, our distributors, they'll send us a product the same way 3 weeks in a row, and then suddenly they'll change the packaging, or they'll, you know, like we had something shipped to us and they sent it with those silly styrofoam peanuts, and we've worked with those. We even worked with them when we had our restaurant. So it was like, we've been with you guys for 7 years. You have never shipped us these styrofoam peanuts. We didn't know anybody even still used these things. And now we have a whole box of them. What do you even do with these? And so it's, you know, go online, look up, like, what do you do with styrofoam peanuts? And what actually ended up happening is it was close to moving day, and there was a gentleman walking down the street sorting through people's recycling of cardboard boxes to look for packing boxes. And I said, if you have anything fragile, I have this box of styrofoam peanuts that you can use to put your things in. And then please pass this box on to somebody else you know who's moving, so that they can also, so we're trying to just keep it out of the landfill entirely and out of the waste stream by just passing it on down the neighborhood for people who are moving, right? Because this is Toronto and somebody's always moving. So, yeah, so that was, you know, one weird thing. But things like talking to our suppliers about why we want things packaged a certain way is an ongoing conversation. So reaching out to our meat suppliers and saying, we don't want things individually cut in a backpack. We want to be able to have an entire piece that we can cut down ourselves and serve fresh and not have it sealed. Or having our yogurts. You know, the yogurts has been a big thing because we've had them in the glass Riviera jars, and people really want to use those jars with the little lids so that they can put their spices and things in their cabinets. But Riviera won't sell us just an open 500-piece case of lids. So we can't get them for our customers. So the people go to other stores and get them because we don't want to bring in just a 4-pack of plastic lids that are all individually wrapped. Things like that. Things like our cheese. We tried to present our cheese a few different ways for the first few weeks. So we left it out to air. That was really bad. We lost a lot of cheese that way. Like air in the fridge, just because commercial refrigerators are incredibly efficient at removing all humidity. And so our cheese dried up and was not very happy. And then we tried wrapping it in beeswax. And what we learned from that is, as much as the beeswax and the vegan wrap, doesn't matter, as much as they're amazing at preserving food, you shop with your eyes. And so if all of the cheese was covered with this wax wrap, you couldn't actually see it. So people were just ignoring the display entirely and walking. They wouldn't even stop and look at it. So that then cost us a lot of loss in the movement of the cheese. And so we've had to put it in, unfortunately, a plastic wrap. It's the only place in the store where you'll find plastic wrap of any kind. And it's specifically because we've had conversations with our charcuterie people, with our cheesemongers, with everybody that we can talk to, including Green Shift, who supplies us with our compostable takeout containers, and talking to them about how we can preserve these things and not have them destroyed. And everybody has said, unfortunately, the only way to do that, unless you basically run a hose with hot water so you keep humidity on your floor of your room all day long, which obviously in a grocery store is less than ideal. This is the only way we can do it to not damage the product until people get it home and then can put it in their own containers. Like, nobody at home worries about putting it in a beeswax or a vegan wax or a snap top container or a baggie or whatever it is that they have. So what we have done then to compensate that is we'll bring in a whole wheel, and that piece of plastic will be reused and reused and reused and reused for the entire wheel, instead of stripping it off, throwing it out, stripping it off, throwing it out, which is what you see generally in a deli station. So again, trying as much as humanly possible to keep things out of the waste stream.
It's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting. So what's next on the horizon now for the Unboxed Market? Because the press absolutely loved the concept. People are really excited about it. I heard that there was a couple of lineups outside your door before the store was even open.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that happened also because we had some delays. We had some contractors who kind of slowed our work up a little bit. So we were about a week and a half later than we were supposed to be opening. So unfortunately, because we had an awesome group of people working for us and trying to get the word out for us, people showed up. They didn't see the follow-up saying, okay, but not yet. And so people showed up and were like, there's still paper on the windows because we're not ready, because we've had these, we had some pipes break and we had some issues with the floor because the pipes broke. And so it was redoing some of the work from the renos, and then like our windows and doors. There's a whole thing with renos and things in the background that you don't expect until obviously you're there. And anybody who's done any kind of renovation knows that none of it ever goes according to plan. And some of the delays are bigger than others. So what is next for us? Right now we're still just trying to get our feet under us. It's very much, like I said earlier, a process of just trying to figure out the flows of what moves. Sometimes milk moves faster. Sometimes apples move faster. Sometimes celery is the hot product right now. And how do we get celery without it's skyrocketed in price. So trying to find that and trying to be able to accommodate our customers so they're not paying outrageous prices for things. That's always been something for the last weeks that we've been trying to figure out. So until we really get ourselves situated here, nothing else is next. As much as people keep calling and saying, please come to our town, or please redo this in another end of the city, or all of those things, we need to make sure everything is sound here before we start looking at anything else. And, maybe a couple of hours of sleep and a full day of not being in the store. We're closed on Mondays right now, but Luis and I are still here and do 16-hour days when we're closed, just making sure that everything is set up and organized and we're not missing something, calling distributors, responding to emails. My inbox has a ridiculous amount of emails in it right now that I need to respond to. It's the constant in-house stuff right now. When you're new, it takes time.
For sure. And you started a movement, right? Especially in Ontario. So people are pretty excited about it. I was just wondering if you have any tips for regular consumers that go to big grocery stores or, other things. What should they be thinking about to kind of help keep stuff out of, the landfill?
I think that it really depends on the individual. I've tried to answer this a few different ways, and every time I come back to trying to think about how our customers shop in our store, and they all do it so differently, because the biggest thing is look at what you already have in your house. Before you try to transition, before you try to go out to the store and just everybody gets really excited, and it's awesome that everybody gets really excited in that. And we want everyone really excited, but you also don't have to go broke doing it. So, you'll go on Instagram or Pinterest, if people still use Pinterest, or those kinds of sites, and see all of these beautiful, I have this mesh bag, I have this cloth, I have this thing, I have that. Don't go out and buy all of those things if you have things that work at home. So if you want to get something for your shampoo, use the shampoo bottle that you have at home and come to the store and refill it. We're not going to even talk about what brand it is or make any kind of a conversation about the fact that it's plastic or glass or cardboard or whatever the thing is that you're bringing in, because everybody brings something differently all the time. If you have plastic shopping bags from your previous trips, use those. Don't put them into the waste stream because you're trying to be more conscientious. Use those until you can't use them anymore and then recycle them. Those kinds of things. So it's very much look around your house first. We had a young woman who came in. It's my favorite story. She came in and she wanted to get eggs, and she wasn't sure about how she was going to carry them, and it was a little bit cold outside. So she had her gloves, the like stretchy gloves, not the full-on fabric ones, and so she tucked her eggs inside the fingers of the gloves because they would stretch around the eggs, and then carried the gloves. So she had a dozen. She had 6, 5 fingers and then the palm. So she had 2 gloves, obviously. So she took her dozen eggs home in her gloves, just on top of her, like in the top of her purse. So, you get a little bit creative sometimes with what you have, and that's awesome, and it's great, and nobody's going to question it. Our staff are amazing at talking things through with people and explaining the store and suggesting products and things that you might have at your house that you want to bring with you to use. And if you don't have them, then yes, we have things that you can get. We have the jars, we have the bags, we have, the one thing about not having packaging is we get a lot of cardboard boxes because they're like the highest, easiest thing to recycle. So we'll have cardboard boxes, and so we'll leave them on the side of the store, and people can, instead of taking a paper bag, take that cardboard box home, because then maybe you're going to use that cardboard box to transfer something to another location, like you're moving or you're going to a meeting later and you have to take a bunch of electronics or whatever the situation is. I'm just kind of spinning it off the top of my head and seeing where people move in their lives in Toronto. But it's also very intrinsic on where you are. We have the advantage here in the city of our store sits on the transit line, so we're at We're at Dundas and Dovercourt, and we're on a streetcar line, and we're close enough to subway, and we have those kinds of opportunities. But if you're in a rural area, then that shifts, right? So maybe it's reaching out to your neighbors and creating a food share program where you take turns going to do the shopping for your neighbors and those kinds of things, or reaching out to farmers and seeing if they'll do a distribution service, or whatever that is. It takes on different forms depending on where you are in your life and in your actual physical environment.
This is amazing. This is great tips. I'm still laughing about the eggs and the gloves.
Yeah, it's so good. It's my favorite story. I love that lady.
I can only
She's my
imagine the
favorite.
look on someone's face if I pulled out my gloves and did that at a normal grocery store. They'd be like, "What?"
But why? See, and that's the thing. Why would you get a weird look? It doesn't. Well, you would get a weird look probably because at most grocery stores they don't even sell eggs loose, which we do. So they would ask you where you put the carton, probably. But that would be it. I mean, I was talking with my mother, and they live about 3 hours from here, and they went shopping. But because of our store, they've also transitioned back to things. It's funny because I said to my mom, like, we did this when we were younger. She's like, I know, but you shift away from it. So now they're shifting back to how we were raised in her home. And so she says, we went to the store the other day and we asked at our local chain, is it okay if we bring our own bags and put, our lettuce in this cotton bag? And is it okay if you have the baguette in paper sleeves, but I have my baguette linen bag? Is it okay if I take the baguette out of the paper sleeve and put it in my bag? And the staff there were really responsive and really excited and very happy to have them do that. Now, not every store is going to respond the same way, and you are talking about rural, and you're talking about an agricultural community, and you're talking about people who are more aware of their food and where it comes from and what happens. But, I mean, if you're not, you have to have the conversation. Go to your store and ask. Ask why they're doing it this way. Ask why pepper has to be individually wrapped. Why does it say on it, this pepper has been individually wrapped for shelf life? A consumer doesn't care about shelf life. Only a store cares about shelf life. A consumer wants to know that product is fresh and going right to their fridge and then going into their food that they're going to eat, not that it somehow has the ability to sit on a shelf for 4 weeks or 3 weeks or an extra however many days that it is. That's irrelevant to a consumer. And in my opinion, it's worse. Why do you want to have a pepper or an apple or a cucumber that now somehow lasts a month longer than all of the other food? What have they done to that? Why? Like, what is the plastic doing to the food? Right? So, those kinds of things. It requires the conversation with the stores that you shop at. That's the first step.
Well, you've definitely going to make me, when I go grocery shopping, think about things a little bit more differently. And I am going to try to challenge some things and make it almost like a challenge itself to see what kind of responses I get or weird looks, because I think it'll be interesting. Because you're right, when I get home and I put stuff away, I take everything out of those plastic things anyways, and then I put it into recycling.
And then you just have all those little plastic bags.
Exactly, and you're just stuck with it, and because I don't use it, right? But I'm gonna take it as a challenge.
And you should. I mean, and it's something that is so simple. Even if you have those plastic produce bags, take them back to the store with you again and refill them. Again, you don't have to get a new bag for it. So we've had people here who have put their own personal challenges. And we had one young woman, she posted to our Facebook page a couple of weeks ago. She literally listed in the month that she had been shopping here everything that she saved, because she actually does meal planning for some private citizens, and so she is very regimented on what she's buying and when she's buying it, and she tracks everything because she has to then bill the client, right? And so she decided to also track what she wasn't getting, and so she had her list of how many bags she didn't get, how many milk cartons she didn't get, how many juice containers, how many yogurt containers, because we have yogurt in bulk, we have sour cream, we have feta cheese, we have all of these things bulk. You can come in and get them in whatever container you have, right? Peanut butter, tahini. So she did this challenge, and so she realized she had reduced all of these things in just a month. And then we had another customer come in the next day because she saw our Facebook post that Stephanie had shared, and she said, in my own home, we have reduced one of those giant blue recycling totes entirely. We have eliminated it. So they had 2 recycling totes, and they have reduced it in a month to 1 recycling tote. That's one family of 2.
Oh,
right? So gosh. Right? And if you look at it that way, it's amazing when everybody says, oh, I'm just one person. I'm sorry. 2 people literally reduced 1 massive blue bin a week just by refilling their shampoo containers and refilling their laundry containers and refilling their milk container, and those things. They're little things, but they very quickly add up.
Well, Michelle, you know what? I'm going to accept the challenge. So consider challenge accepted. I am totally pumped. I am ready to join this movement. Posted. Yeah, I will test it out, because I want to see how much, you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. So now that you kind of brought awareness to my eyes about something I've never paid attention to properly before, I am going to take a look to see what I end up doing. So I think that would be really fun. Well,
please let us know all of the things. We love all of this information. It just makes it more exciting. If somebody tells us, a new challenge or a new thing or a new experience because of what they've experienced at the store, that's just even better for us. It just gets us more excited and keeps us motivated to continue to find more things and more ways and access those things for our customers.
Love it. So congratulations, Michelle. This is brilliant. I love the movement that you've started. I'm definitely on the train with you. I think it's amazing. And how can our listeners connect with you?
Okay, so we're everywhere. You can find us on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. So it's at Unboxed Market. On Twitter, it's Unboxed Market CA. We have a website, unboxedmarket.com. You can email us. Best is to come into the store. We're here every day except for Mondays right now. We're open from Tuesday to Saturday, 9 to 8, and Sundays 10 till 6. There's not 2 Saturdays in a week still, I'm pretty sure. Sometimes it feels like it. So those are our hours. We're closed on Mondays. Come in, talk to us, call, email. We're more than happy to chat with people and have their experiences and shared with us, and also to be able to share the store and what we're doing with everybody.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining and listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, please share with your friends and colleagues. You can share on social media, the email link, the newsletter, and so on. Let's continue to support these Canadian innovators and help them really grow into bigger brands. Awareness and knowledge is totally key. Anyways, I can't wait to talk to you next week. Cheers.